Hey guys, welcome back to Zenless Zone Zero. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all of the S-rank characters in the game and some teams that you can piece together if you do happen to pull these characters. Now, before we get into it, I do have to give Zenless Zone Zero a massive shout out for sponsoring this video. And if you do want to play the game, I'll have a link in the description below. And as an added bonus, they are giving away in-game an extra 1600 polychrome to go ahead and get yourself some extra summons for reaching 50 million global downloads. So before we get into the individual characters and their teams themselves, I just want to cover some basics with team building. Often with characters in their core passive, they will have conditions that they need to have another character of their element or their faction on the team to trigger extra bonuses. So often you will be seeing characters played with other characters, often of the same element, but also sometimes of the same faction. Keep in mind, sometimes if they are of the same element, you get elemental buffs tied into it, and that's why elemental teams are kind of something that you will see, but they are not must-haves, but just understand that that is a core thing that will happen in this. The other core thing behind the teams is that normally you're going to have a DPS, then you're probably going to have a stunner and a support. Now, once again, with everything, there are exceptions to this rule, but in general, that is a nice balanced team that you have. You have a stunner so that you can stagger the enemy and get that extra damage phase to happen. And then on top of that, you have your damage dealer, obviously for the damage dealing capacity, and buffers are always there to help amplify your damage, or buffers / support. So that is going to be a core fundamental that we look at. Once again, you don't have to do this every time, but just so you know when you are building your teams together, so that you do have a team that has somewhat synergy. And if you're really struggling and you feel like your team isn't working at all, maybe you are missing some of the key synergies in that. But once again, we are going to go through all of the S-ranked characters in the game and some teams that you can piece together depending on what options you have. So let's get into it. Let's kick it off with the first banner character, Ellen. Now, she is an ice damage focused unit who does longer type combo attacks. She has this unique playstyle where she wants to enter a dash mode, which gives her great maneuverability, but also you want to attack out of it to gain charges, which you can then expend to deal extra damage. And because she does have those combos, she is really going to want the enemies to be stunned to be safe to attack. It's not necessary, but it does help. And when we look to her first teammate, the ideal teammate for her is going to be Lycaon. This guy is absolutely fantastic because he is probably the best stunner in the game. He has increased stagger that he deals, and he also further increases the damage that enemies take while they are stunned. He is absolutely fantastic and a no-brainer to be placed with Ellen because once again, they are both iced element, which is fantastic. Now, in the final slot of this team, you would be looking to use Sukaku, who is an A level, who is also on Ellen's banner, which is she's going to give, when she is paired with those ice units, going to give you the extra ice damage, but she's also going to give you the attack buff with her fly the flag. Just an all-round great support for this ice core team. Now, I did mention Lycaon in this one as the stunner. However, if you do not have him, that's okay. We do have other options. If you happen to pull Koleda, who is another 5-star, you can use her. However, if you do not have her and you are still looking for, the last possible stunner that you can use, then you can always take Anby, who is a free character that everyone will have. Next up, we have Lycaon. Now, as I mentioned in the previous team, he works fantastic in the Ice team, paired with Ellen. Absolutely fantastic unit. This guy can also pretty much go as your stun unit in almost any team, as long as you can make at least core synergies between your other two characters work. However, if we're looking at a team that has a really nice core synergy for himself, then we would be looking at a free-to-play unit of the A-level Corin as the damage dealer. Now, part of her core passive is that if an ally shares her element, which she is physical, or her faction, which Lycaon does share, then she will deal extra damage to stunned enemies, which brings in that core synergy of Lycaon being such a great stunner and stunning enemies super fast, and then Corin can amplify her damage based on that. Now, once again, you can use him with just about any DPS in the game as long as they have a core synergy, but I think that's just the most notable one to note because of the synergies that they have with each other. But once again, you do really want to be pushing for Ellen if you are going Lycaon, but if you don't want to go for her and you want to save save, you do have that other option. Now, as for your final unit, we can go straight back to Sukaku for this team, because once again, Sukaku does share the element with Lycaon, which means we are going to be able to proc those additional benefits of the core passive. Next up, we have Grace, who is an electric anomaly unit who specializes in stacking shock. So when we look to her, she's sort of played as almost like a sub DPS sort of synergistic unit. And in this team that you use with her, you don't have to have a stunner, but you can have a stunner. So we're going to look at the core synergy of Grace being paired with Anton, who is an A level unit that everyone can get their hands on. Now, Anton is fantastic because he specializes in being able to take advantage of triggering shocks. So you want to have as much shock on as possible. And Grace is once again fantastic at applying that. So these two have a fantastic synergy, and these two at the moment are pretty safe to pair together, which leaves us with one remaining slot. Now, this last slot you can sort of play around depending on what you have and what you have access to. If you have Rina, who is another 5-star, she can be a great support for this team. However, because she's a 5-star, I do want to give you guys some other options. We're going to go through a couple other 5-stars that we have. You can use Koleda, or you can use Lycaon as a stunner in this team as well if you want to have that extra stun capacity. But once again, if you don't have these, because we've just mentioned 3 5-stars that you can be pairing in this team, we do have Anby as the final unit who can be used in this team. She is another electric unit, and she is a stunner on top of that. Not as efficient as something like Lycaon, but still a usable stunner in the electric team that we have with the core of Grace and Anton. Next up is Nekomata, a physical damage dealer who specializes in really quick attacks, but also wants to be played somewhat skillfully because she will get the extra damage increase after using a quick assist or a dodge counter. So timing those dodges is going to be helpful. Now, the first synergy that I want to look at with her is Piper. Now, Piper is an anomaly unit from also physical element, which means she is really good at stacking that physical anomaly. And once you stack it enough, you will inflict assault on the enemy. And the reason this is important is that with Nekomata, when another character inflicts assault, her damage of her EX special skill is going to be increased by 35%, stacking up to 2 times, which is very, very potent. So once again, getting that anomaly stacked is going to be really powerful with the Piper. Now, if we look to the final unit to put into a team with these ones, you can use something like Lycaon if you do have him as a stunner. However, you don't have him, Anby works pretty well as a stunning unit, but she also does share a faction with Nekomata, meaning you will trigger her extra passive as well. So it is quite synergistic. Now, you can also look to a support like something like Nicole, but like I said, we do have those pretty good core options in there for Nekomata. Next up we have is Koleda. Now, I have mentioned her in a couple teams as a sub option as a stunning unit, so her primary role is as a stunner. Now, she does have something very unique in her kit that when she is with Ben on the same team, they do increase their stunning capabilities. So pairing her with Ben is definitely an option, but we do have options in case you don't like the look of Ben. So first off, we need to have a damage dealer. Your 2 main damage dealers to put into this team with her, number 1 is going to be Soldier 11, shares the fire element and just a really solid damage dealer. However, once again, that is another S rank character, so you may not have that. So we have to have another option. And the other option we're looking at here is Piper. She is an anomaly unit, which is also a type of damage dealer. As we mentioned before, she specializes in stacking that physical anomaly, so she can actually slot not too bad into this team and get some pretty good synergies when we look to our last support. Now, as I mentioned, you can use Ben in a team with them. However, you do also have the option of Lucy in the final position. The reason Lucy works really well is because she then allows the activation of the passives of both of these characters. She's a fire element, meaning she can activate the passive of Koleda because they are the same element, and she is from the same faction as Piper, meaning they both get to trigger that additional bonus. So this team is really solid, but once again, you can get those core synergies out of Ben. However, Ben would be one I would more look to in the Soldier 11 fire team for more core synergies. Next up, we have Soldier 11. Now, I have mentioned her previously in the Koleda teams, so she's going to be your main damage dealer in the team, and she is that fire element. So, as I mentioned, you can use Soldier 11 with Koleda if you have her, and either Lucy or Ben as the final slot. However, if you do not have Koleda, Lucy is once again going to be nailed to the hip of Soldier 11 because she is that fire element and she is a great supportive character. However, if you don't have that Koleda, that final slot can actually be filled in by Piper. Piper being in the same faction as Lucy allows them both to proc their additional benefits, and then Lucy obviously proccing the additional benefits of Soldier 11 gives you just some great synergy in that team using Soldier 11 with a couple of A rank characters. And finally, we have Rina, who is a fantastic support. She has great boosting for the electric element, and she also has penetration in her kit, which is great. So obviously, as we mentioned earlier, if you do have Grace, her paired with Grace and Anton is going to be an absolutely fantastic combo to run. However, if you don't have the Grace, you do still have some options. You can run Nicole in there as a supportive type option. However, if you do need someone for some extra stunning, you do have Anby as an option, who is also an electric unit to slot in there. So there you go, guys. No matter which S rank you have some sort of team to look towards, and don't be afraid to experiment and try things because the game is still very new and you may find new things out along the way that you enjoy in your playstyle, because at the end of the day, it is a game about having fun and it is an action game, so playstyle is always going to be one of the most important things. Once again, a massive shout out to Zenless Zone Zero for sponsoring this video, and if you do want to play the game, I'll have the link in the description. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.